Hello, Ed Kang here, creator of MDNA. You scored CVS, which stands for Compelling Value and Stewardship. Now I'm going to get into what the CVS is all about, but before I do, I just want to remind you that MDNA is all about your intrinsic motivational spectrum. This is the reason you get two gifts, because it shows a spectrum, and it's important for you to really look at both gifts to get a full picture of who you are, what you're all about, how you can synchronize your purpose, passions, and potential, etc. Give it a go. In another video, I'm going to be overviewing how you can be left or right-brained CVS. But that's for another time. Right now, let's look at CVS, Compelling Value and Stewardship. I'll explain what all those words mean as we get to it, because this is a really interesting and unique gift, because we found that the CVS can be one of the hardest gifts to assess without using assessments. And even when the assessment comes out, sometimes it can be off. The reason for this is because the CVS is the most versatile and flexible of all the gifts. Of all the gifts, the CVS gift can actually look like all the other gifts in some form or another, because the CVS really brings this compelling value, not just value, but value that compels. And it's all about stewardship, which we'll explain a little more later. They're the hardest to identify where to fit in an organization. I like to use the word relentlessly resourceful. This is where the CVS is really great in startup scenarios, because they're willing to do everything and they'll drive value by doing everything. CVS tend to look at things from a generational legacy approach. For example, when a CVS is thinking about family, estate planning, or what have you, they're always thinking about how much money they're going to be able to leave to their kids, or what value, or how they're setting up the next generations and taking that legacy approach. This means that everything's value driven for the CVS, and that's really important to understand about the CVS. You're all about value, and you're a financial magnet. I know CVS that just seem to attract financial opportunities or value-based opportunities, which is great, which means you have to be an ROI champion. Because you're value-driven, ROI is extremely important, and that's good. We all need people to really champion ROI, especially in projects, etc. So that's you. That's what your purpose is all about. Like I said, relentlessly resourceful and fantastic for startups. So when it comes to your passions, you're really passionate about being independent. And this is not a good or bad thing. It depends on the situation. But intrinsically, you prefer to be independent and private. So you're not going to be running around telling everybody all these personal details about yourself. And that's okay. You're also very opportunistic. You prefer to explore and keep all options open versus tackling challenges directly. So you have no problems in looking at creative solutions. Instead of going head on, you can say, let's look at some alternatives here and get creative to get the value out of something without going straight on, and you can be opportunistic. CVS can see an opportunity, and because they're so flexible and versatile, they'll just jump on it. You're generous, yet wise with resources. So for you, instead of a hand out, a hand up is extremely important when it comes to resources. Remember, it's all about value and ROI and legacy. So no problems being generous, but you just want to be wise with them. And that's really good. Your creative approach to derive value means that you hesitate to accept absolutes. Whereas the other gift, UCD, there can be lots of clashes between the UCD and CVS because the UCD is so black and white. The CVS accepts all the grays in between, and that's super important. And that's good because that's required to creatively solve problems and to derive value, often when value can't be seen. And this means you're also connected. And this is value-driven connection versus relational connection like an EIA would be, but this is you. Now, when it comes to your potential, you have the potential to nurture and foster new initiatives. Remember, relentlessly resourceful in startup situations. New initiatives, great. You're really good at that. You're highly keen to ulterior motives. CVS, it's really hard to kind of bamboozle a CVS because by instinct, you're always thinking, when's the next shoe going to drop? Is this for real? So you're keen to ulterior motives. You can sustain ideological tension without need for closure. So that means regardless of people's ideologies, people could be completely against each other, ideologically speaking. You have the ability to drive value and you don't need to close that off. You just can get everybody to work together, which is really great. And altogether, you're a natural deal maker and negotiator. You understand value, which means you know how to negotiate value as well. And this is extremely important. Now, that's a synchronized CVS. When you're desynchronized, these are some of the things you have to watch out for. You can be prone to being risk averse. CVS can be really risk averse because it's all about value. Overly frugal, and this can be frustrating for other people. For you, being frugal for yourself is not a problem, but if you're frugal at the detriment of other people, well, that can become an issue, of course. You might have temptation to see finances as a point of security, manipulating networks through false ownership of resources. So if you see finances, money, as your main source of security, that can become an issue as well. And we've seen CVS manipulate networks by taking resources themselves. You disdain being confronted with past issues. Remember, everything's gray, and so past is past. It's not worth your time. So the CVS can sometimes really get cranky when being confronted with past issues. Now, if you're a CVS and you start a company or an organization or a group, your intrinsic motivation imprints the social DNA, or what we call brand culture, of valued accessibility. Your organization or your brand culture is all about bringing value and access to that value. And so we don't have time to get into it here, but just know that your intrinsic motivation does imprint on the social DNA. Okay? So that's it. And hopefully this has been of value for you and you get lots of ROI out of this information. Talk to you soon.